Hello and welcome to What Would Jane Do? This is a special episode to react to the announcement of the cast for the upcoming Netflix series of Pride and Prejudice, which they are just about to start filming in the summer of 2025. Now, so let's call that What Would Jane Do about casting Pride and Prejudice? So the first thing, we must start at the top of the billing. And so we have news that has been out for a while now that Emma Corrin is taking the absolutely crucial role of Elizabeth Bennet. Now, Emma Corrin, many of you will probably know best from playing the young Diana in the Crown series, but she has also she's one of those actors who's having a real sort of high point in her career. She's been in Deadpool versus Wolverine. In fact, if you look at her filmography, she is a very busy girl. So well, not so much a girl, she's 30, but as is the case with Hollywood, they often cast people a little bit older than their roles and they look young enough, so that's absolutely fine. What does Emma bring to the role? Well, I think she will bring wit. She's obviously good looking, but she also has this interesting, what we used to call tomboyish aspect to her in her fashion choices. So she is the bit of a misfit. You can imagine her playing the father's daughter very well. So I'm quite excited to see what she does with the role. Of course, it's very hard following on from previous Elizabeths, but let's clear a way for her and see what she does with her interpretation. Now, next down in the listing is, of course, Mr. Darcy, who is Jack Loudon. Now, Jack Loudon is unusual in the Darcys when you look at the back history, in that he has the sort of sandy, tawny hair look, and he very often has a beard. I'm not sure if they're going to keep the beard because that wasn't a fashion choice of people of his age at that time. They were usually clean shaven, showing off the fact they could afford a valet and all that kind of extra primping and pampering. But we'll see. I think he probably will be clean shaven. He is an excellent actor. I particularly like him in Slow Horses, where he plays the earnest but in the slow lane, as the series conceit is of the spy series with Gary Oldman. Another notable thing about Jack, which I don't know if American listeners is aware of, is that he has an absolutely gorgeous Scottish accent. I wonder if he will keep that. It will be great. Pemberley is up in Derbyshire. One could imagine a world where he has a Scottish mother. It would be lovely, and it would also distinguish him from previous Darcys, and it would also be interesting just to sort of give a sense of a bit more of a national range in the accents. So fingers crossed he keeps his accent. So again, what I like about that casting is they've gone for someone who won't remind me of Colin Firth or Matthew McFadden. So let's again give him. I'm sort of hoping with this series because when you've got versions of the same story which still look really good and stand up to rewatching now, you kind of wonder where are they going to go. So these slightly different choices in casting gives us these signals, I think. And then, of course, the next on the list is Olivia Colman, Oscar winner, all-round smiley person. I remember her particularly, well, I mean, again, in The Crown, playing Queen Elizabeth in her middle years. She has a line in Queens because she also played Queen Anne. I think she's an interesting casting because she is not elderly, not old. They're casting the Bennet family parents at sort of age appropriately. She's someone who could have girls of this age. And so that would give her energy. She's got her own beauty, her own sort of attraction, which kind of fits when we get to the casting of Mr. Bennet. But she also plays, I think she'll be interesting, like Barbara Blethyn was in the Keira Knightley version. She plays a bit dizzy, but also with a purpose. And that's what I loved about Barbara Blethyn's version of Mrs. Bennet. And what I didn't like about the Alison Steadman version back in the BBC version from the 90s, 95, where she was a bit pantomime damey, very sort of hysterical, really. And I liked the more moderated Keira Knightley film version. And I'm hoping that's the direction Olivia Colman will take because, of course, Mrs. Bennet is right. She is looking to the economic future of her family, but she is also silly. She's very like Lydia. Lydia is like her. Okay, so now the reason I'm doing this video is because of the announcement about the next bunch of the major players. And the one that's most eye-catching, I think, in this list is Rufus Sewell, who is going to be playing Mr. Bennet. Now, Rufus Sewell, uh, I remember his debut as a stunningly good-looking person in Cold Comfort Farm. That dates it back. And where he played a young man off to be a Hollywood idol. And he's had an interesting career since then, playing a whole range of villains. He's in Man in the High Castle, I believe. But he also has recently played the role of the diplomat's husband in that series, which I rather like, that series, having once been a diplomat myself, having had a husband who accompanied me to my posting, not at that level, but it was an interesting to watch a modern version of the diplomatic life. And he plays Hal, the diplomat's husband, with a calculation, political nous and calculation, which is very interesting and attractive. So I think he will make a good foil for Olivia Colman because he is humorous and he is knowing, but he is also careless. Mr. Bennet, that's his biggest fault. He takes his eye off the ball, really, because he prefers to be with his books. But I do like the fact that they are making a sort of a kind of younger, sexier, I guess, Mr. Bennet. Not that, there's previous Mr. Bennets had their own charms, no doubt. But they were older people's charms, and now he seems to be reinterpreting it. So again, that would be an interesting role to watch. Okay, going down the list, who do we have? Well, let's do the sisters next. So playing Jane, we have Freya Maver. Now, this is a really interesting casting from the point of view of looks, because the natural look to Freya, if they stick with that, it was hard to tell from the production still that they've released, is that she is a redhead with a delightful, natural, freckly face. I noticed that in some of her films that has been hidden. I'd love to see it out there, natural, because she is gorgeous, she's stunning, but she's a redhead. That's great too. I was looking at through her filmography. I found her familiar looking without actually knowing any of the things she's been in. She's 31. And so for her, this must be a massive break. And I'm looking forward to seeing what energy she brings to that role. She makes a good foil to Emma Corrin. And they have that sort of a similarity to them where you can believe they're sisters, but also it'd be easy to distinguish them apart, which I'm sure is what they were going for. Both got lovely blue eyes, for example. Another interesting tidbit about Freya is that she spent some of her growing up years in France, so she speaks beautiful French and has appeared in French-speaking programming. So that's a nice thing to know about. That's a nice thing to know about Freya. Now, going to the next most important of the Bennet sisters, of course, we have the youngest, and that's going to be Lydia Bennet, of course, played by Rhea Norwood. In keeping with the age ranges, she looks to be quite young. She's only 24 by my calculations, and born in the UK. She is known for a recent uh, program called Heartstoppers. But obviously being so young, she's not got a great track record behind her. She's just starting in her career. I think this can be called the production with the blue eyes. Again, big blue eyes. It'll be interesting to see if she makes more of Lydia than just the sort of flighty version, the sort of dumb blonde version even. I really liked this is going a little bit tangential, but I really liked the Gemma Coleman version of Lydia, which appeared in the Death at Pemberley, Death Comes to Pemberley version, which was like the P.D. James story set in the days after Pride and Prejudice, where she played Lydia as knowing that her life choices were dangerous. It was a wonderfully judged performance. Great, great. That's my favourite Lydia. Um, anyway, so good luck to Rare taking on, I think, quite a difficult role to make anything more than a sort of airhead, foolish child of a person. So let's see what she does with it. And then I'm pleased to see they've managed to include all the sisters because they have Hopi Parish and Holly Avery as Mary Bennett and Kitty Bennett, respectively, both of whom seem to be debut actors, so little is known about them. One thing I would say, though, to Holly and Hopi, remember what happened to the sisters down the pecking order in the Keira Knightley film. And that is that Kerry Mulligan, who played Kitty Bennett, has gone on to have possibly the most stratospheric career of them all. So don't think you're just an also ran. You might be the star of the future. And also, they've cast Hopi, who's a kind of plus size actress. So it's good to see that there's a bit more inclusion in that way uh, in the lineup of girls. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with these parts. So, looking at the men, um, I'm delighted to announce that they have a wonderfully comedic Mr. Collins in the works. That's Jamie Demetriou, who, when you look at his previous roles, he is the comic. He's been in Fleabag, he's been in Paddington 2 as the prisoner called the Professor. So he's used to playing this broad comedy. What we can expect from him is not the smarmy Mr. Collins of the 1995 or the socially awkward one of the Keira Knightley film, which I thought was a really interesting serious interpretation of Mr. Collins. I'm expecting something more modern and comedic from him. He's also relatively young, so his attempt to propose to Elizabeth isn't ridiculous. Not a bad looking chap either, so they're going to have to do something to make him a little. It's going to be his mannerism, the buffoonery, that's going to make him an obvious no chance with our Elizabeth. And now we get to a casting which shows that we are in a modern post-Bridgerton world, and that is the casting of Mr. Bingley as Daryl McCormack. He'll be familiar if you've seen or watched the trailers for Good Luck to You, Leo Grand, which was the film with Emma Thompson, flashback, Sense and Sensibility, in 2022. A gorgeous looking young man of, I assume, mixed race, absolutely fabulous. It'd be interesting if they just ignore, this is the era of slavery and colour prejudice. It'd be interesting if they ignore that or they nod to it. They don't need to make any reference to it whatsoever, but I would just be interested to see what they do. I mean, you can very easily deal with it because the Bingleys are from trade, international trade, so why not? He could easily have um, a mother from other country, which would make that a perfectly acceptable explanation for the fact that he's not the sort of pasty white person. I hope they do that. I'd like them to actually acknowledge it and dip a bit into the horrible prejudice of the time. It would be an interesting side, fresh look at what might be going on underneath the world of Pride and Prejudice. And you can probably find hints of it in the snobbery surrounding Bingley. So, and that also makes Mr. Darcy even nicer because he is not prejudiced. Anyway, just a suggestion, program makers. Doubt they're listening, but I would actually quite enjoy them touching on that within the world of the book. I think it's totally allowable. And of course, if you have a black Mr. Bingley, you need to make sure his sister looks as though they're part of the same family. I wish you get into convoluted explanations why that isn't the case. And we have the gorgeous Sienna Kelly as Caroline Bingley, the best snob in the book. I wonder if we will react differently. She's an easy person to hate in the novel or dislike. In fact, even lovely Jane is driven to disliking her. It'd be interesting to watch how that changes if they do make any reference at all to the sort of racial prejudice of the era. It's going to be that'll be a tricky one to handle. Anyway, that's a bit of a challenge, but it's the logic if you decide to make a more diverse casting. And I think these are the right roles to do it with. So I can see why they've gone in that direction. But they have also set themselves up with a problem. Mind you, there are plenty of other people in the story who don't like. So I guess it's fair. And talking about characters we love to hate, who is going to be Mr. Wickham? Well, this I think is a really good, potentially really good casting because they've gone for Louis Partridge, who we all fell in love with as the clueless suitor in Enola Holmes, if you remember that young man. But when you look at his other things he's done, he's also played quite opposite extreme Sid Vicious in a TV miniseries about the Sex Pistols. So he obviously has his range. But I think there's something doe-eyed and beautiful about young Mr. Partridge, which can explain why people fall for him. But clearly he has his Sid Vicious side as well, his more sort of punk side, which would fit really well with the outsider schemer uh, person who is Mr. Wickham. He's also just your standard bad guy in many ways, that British bad guy. So I wonder where he's going to put the shading in that character. But I think that is a casting which will be quite easy to accommodate within the story, shall we say. And last but very not least is possibly my favourite casting call of them all, which is for Lady Catherine de Bourgh. There are a number of wonderful actors that you could have cast in this role. It does attract actors at the top of their game. But they have gone for someone who I rate very highly indeed for her work on stage and on screen, and that is Fiona Shaw. Many of you will actually know her as Aunt Petunia. It's funny that when the write-up of this, I saw people quoting that she was in Killing Eve. Yeah, no, but the general public know her as Aunt Petunia. So she is going to be wonderful. She is also appeared, just a little bit of trivia here, in a very different role in another Jane Austen adaptation, and that was the absolutely splendiferous, best of them all, Persuasion from I think it's 96 with Kieran Hines and Amanda Root, where she played Lady Croft, Admiral Croft's wife. Completely different role, twinkly, lovely, soft, charming woman. And now she gets to stretch her aristocratic talons and try and land a blow on Elizabeth. So that will be fabulous. I'm really looking forward to the scene where she and Emma Corrin go head to head. Elizabeth versus Lady Catherine. It should be epic. So on that note, what would Jane do about the casting of Pride and Prejudice? I think if a modern Jane would be very interested in this casting and would be, like me, keeping her fingers crossed that it works out as well as it is promising at the moment.